Today we're talking about my favorite constructed language, and as much of a narcissist as I am, it's not my creation. It's made by this big brain individual by the name of Jan van Steenbergen, who, despite being Dutch, decided to become an expert in another ugly language, Polish. If you're familiar with the auxiliary language Interslavic, he's one of its co-creators, and considering he was involved with that banger of a language, you know he never miss. The language we're talking about today is called Venedic, and it is an a posteriori language. You see, constructed languages can be classed into one of two broad categories. A priori refers to languages that you create from nothing, from scratch, while a posteriori is when you take an already existing language and you transform it in some way to create something brand new. So what did our boy take and what did he transform it to? Well, if you've heard of another constructed language by the name of Brythonique, the concept behind Venedic won't be anything new to you. Brythonique is basically what if English was a Romance language. Venedic is the same but with Polish. In fact, both languages exist within the same fictional universe of Il-Bethesad, a sort of alternate history project. The language is spoken in the fictional Republic of the Two Crowns, which is like the modern-day version of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. In this video, I will be focusing exclusively on the linguistic aspects of the language, but if you're into alternative history, you're free to discover the deep lore behind this project at your own leisure. I just wanted to point out that the final sentence of the historical description says, as a result, the Republic of the Two Crowns is currently in charge of its own zone of occupation in southeast Florida. And I'm just wondering where we went wrong that this isn't the timeline that we live in. I guess this is what you can accomplish when your country isn't ravaged by communists. The way Venedic was created is basically you take Latin and put it through the same sound changes that Polish has gone through. The result is a language whose vocabulary is entirely Romance, but which is spelled and pronounced exactly like modern Polish. As for the grammar, it's kind of a mix of both. You can notice Polish bits and pieces and structures that seem otherwise Romance and vice versa. I'm going to give an overview of the language, focusing on the parts I find the most intriguing. I'll read some example text so you can judge on your own how you feel about the language, and after that I'll briefly mention some other topics related to this project. As for the phonology and orthography, as I mentioned, is identical to modern Polish, and I conveniently already have a video that covers that. It's intended for people who don't know anything about linguistics, so if you do, I'll give you like a 15-second version. 6 vowels, 2 nasal vowels that aren't really nasal vowels, no vowel reduction, many consonants, a contrast between palatal and retroflex sibilants, weird palatal spelling rules, word final obstruents get devoiced, obstruent clusters agree in voicing, stress on the penult. Okay, let's look at nouns. Venedic, just like Polish, has 3 genders, retaining the system found in Latin. This distinguishes it from modern Romance languages, which only have a binary split, except Romanian, but the wimpy Romanian neuter is actually just masculine in the singular and feminine in the plural. In addition, although in Romance languages cases have disappeared, except for tiny crumbs of them left in, again, Romanian, the Slavic case-maxing gene is so dominant that the author decided to retain some of them in Venedic. Starting with the Latin system, first the ablative is lost, most of its functions being adopted by the genitive case, and then the nominative merges with the accusative to form the direct case. Some nouns also have a separate vocative form, but they are far and few in between. This means that just like Latin and Polish, Venedic can get away with not using articles, which again makes it unique when compared to modern Romance languages. There are 3 declensions. I guess this is as good a place as any to mention that I don't know much about Latin, so I might get some things wrong. Either way, the first declension is the same as the first declension in Latin, encompassing feminine nouns ending in a. You might notice that there is some palatalization going on morpheme boundaries, and that is the result of all the Polish sound changes applied to the language. This also means that these declensions can differ depending on whether the stem ends with a hard or soft consonant, a very Slavic feature. There are some masculine personal nouns in the first declension, and in the plural they inflect like second declension nouns. Speaking of which, the second declension covers most of masculine and neuter nouns, and corresponds to the second and fourth declension in Latin, also including some third declension nouns. In this declension, masculine plurals differ depending on whether they are applied to human or non-human nouns, while neuter nouns have yet another plural ending. Genitive forms in this declension can either end in e or u, just like in Polish. However, unlike the notoriously unpredictable Polish system, the choice between either ending in Venedic is a matter of the softness of the final consonant in the stem. The third and final declension is reserved mostly for feminine nouns ending in a soft consonant, corresponding to the Latin third and fifth declensions. It also includes some neuter nouns with endings that disappeared in the nominative, but which surface in other declined forms. And finally, there are a handful of irregular nouns. Adjectives, as you might expect, agree in case, number, and gender with a noun they modify, but unlike nouns, adjectives don't have different declensions. One thing to note is that plural adjectives have separate forms for masculine human nouns, and the remaining masculine nouns take the neuter endings. This is different from Latin, and also Polish, in which, yes, masculine human nouns get a separate form, but all remaining nouns are lumped together. As to their placement, adjectives can occur before or after nouns, which you might recognize as a feature found in Romance languages. However, the way it's implemented in Venedic is actually more akin to the way it's done in Polish. And this means that generally adjectives are placed before nouns when they are used as general descriptors, but after them in fixed expressions. Adverbs can be derived from adjectives with the suffix mięć, which, if you speak a Romance language, you can probably recognize. Alternatively, you can also just drop the final vowel of the adjective. This is also how adverbs are formed from participles. Dropping the final vowel is also possible in predicates. Comparatives and superlatives of adjectives and adverbs are formed with pretty straightforward suffixes, although certain common words are, as you might expect, irregular. Personal pronouns, as is true for every language, have more inflections than puny nouns. In the case of Venedic, it amounts to the distinction between nominative and accusative forms being retained. Venedic has plural pronouns for all three genders, unlike Polish, which mirrors the human masculine versus everything else split seen in adjectives. What is similar to Polish, however, is the fact that the TV distinction is accomplished by addressing the interlocutor in third person using the nouns meaning sir or madam. Reflexives are simplified compared to Romance languages, with one form applied to all persons and numbers, again a nod to Polish. Possessives are also more akin to what Polish does, with the S initial forms only used reflexively, while other third-person possessives are covered by genitive forms of third-person pronouns. From what I've seen, the S initial determiners tend to be ambiguous in Romance languages. Other pronouns like demonstratives and interrogatives are rather unremarkable, so I'll just throw in every conlanger's favorite table of correlatives. When it comes to prepositions, each requires the following noun to be in a specific case, but one interesting thing the language does, which is a feature of both Latin and Polish, is the fact that the same preposition can have a different meaning depending on which case follows it. For instance, en means in when used with the genitive case, and into when used with the direct case. As for numbers, let's look at how they inflect. Naturally, they inflect for case, but numbers 1 and 2 also inflect for gender. What is more noteworthy is another feature borrowed from Polish. Quantified nouns are in the singular following the number 1, and plural after numbers 2, 3, and 4, with both the number and the noun agreeing in case. However, higher numbers cause the following noun to be in the genitive plural. And finally, the main course, verbs. Thankfully, the creator of the language applied the nice and simple tense aspect mood system found in Polish instead of the absolute hell Romance tenses are, so we don't have to deal with cringe such as pluperfects, subjunctives, and preterite tenses no one uses anymore. The main difference compared to Polish is that Polish technically only has 2 tenses, but it also has separate perfective and imperfective verbs for the same concept, which gives us 4 combinations. And the missing future imperfective is formed by using the future form of the copula, which is the only verb that has a future form, followed by the imperfective infinitive. In Venedic, on the other hand, these are all just separate tenses evolved from Latin, except for the future imperfective, which uses the same construction Polish does. I am somewhat perturbed by the perfective-imperfective split in the copula though, because that's not a thing in Polish, and this distinction was very confusing to me when I tried to learn Portuguese. Speaking of the copula, it's also used to form the conditional mood. In Romance languages, it evolved from infinitives followed by the verb to have, but in Venedic, similarly to Polish, the verb to be, in its conditional form, is used for that purpose instead. There are also imperative forms, and lastly, verbs also have gerunds, which are just verbal nouns, as well as active and passive participles. There are many conjugation classes, but there's a lot of syncretism between them, so it looks harder than it really is. Naturally, there's a lot of irregular verbs, and which ones those are you can probably guess. Now, when it comes to syntax, the only thing the author writes is that it's identical to that of Polish, so I'm assuming word order is freer than in other Romance languages, and you don't have things like putting object pronouns before verbs and so on. With all that said and done, let's listen to how the language actually sounds, and if you speak a Romance language, see if you can understand anything. It's supposed to be pronounced exactly like Polish, so I guess you'll be getting a perfect native accent. Also, I wrote the gloss by myself, so there might be mistakes. Jorasi jelkendy grzecz woszkar wiwięciar nientra wiekła szeplinia. Wyna jewnia woszka jębława siąmsz o krzepie i soniawa dzieiłu komut si wiwier ziętra szep. Ła porława kunie kwałar jautrar woszkar masz ile się nie oskrodawą. Jorą fliczę trzepie i szep jora tut kudle kunie szczewą. Uta i wiała wlewa świejli wartacie i par siecianie i siecianie rąpiewa si kap komut si oczepier par wiekła szeplinia. Wynudzej ła finalemięć jęwieńszy łok niefierzmen szepie i kupuku pienie z brzosiełą. Ła jegradzien kom twierdzi i woce jałtrze woszcze. Uta jałtrze woszcze, że fyzarą wnier. Jora siekier nientra szep i jąźle w lewą rzemaniar. Dąg jewnia woszka zwatrzy suła prokut spurar mąd ziętra szep. Szczelęcie łasie ojekawa. Czerekawa jeci jądź, mętkawa wrzeska żeba, biewa trzoza jekwa i śpiędziewa ciempu fantaski. Ła czerekawa i czerekawa parmiezie, masz finalemięć jęwieńszy śpieczalemięć jukenda pieca pratu, en kwalej dzieczydzie rzemaniar. Kiedy wynudzej czerekawa en pratu, ła jęwieńszy obiec strani. I ujora łągi i tążewa tącu łoniąc komod okieł widziewa. Jora grzysi i splędzie szczędzi i dery. I umrotwawa łą, parkud jora cieży blemięć siębły o wiekła szeplinia. Masz ła ćmiewa kud szerpocie jęgry ciempu i węczerku i stawiecz ocierze akuratamięć jądzież wąć komięcy. Uta pokud ła probie łąg, woszka dziewatrzy, o finie flicza. Lejże nie mrotwawa i obiec strani enczerkłęci łą. Prostokud stawiecz ła szczewa, kud szepie kostrycie są za linie. Masz nie za metału. Yeah, I didn't want to pick the North Wind and the Sun because everyone knows that one already. Overall, looking at the vocabulary of the language and comparing it to Polish, I've noticed some interesting things. Obviously, we have some cognates that are identical in both languages, which is to be expected since both Polish and Latin are Indo-European. There are some words which are also cognates, but which have different forms in Venedic because they went through all the regular sound changes, while the Polish equivalents are just learned borrowings, so they resemble the original forms more. Then there are some funny false friends, like how czytać means city in Venedic, and in Polish it means to read, and some others I found. Before we wrap up, I wanted to talk about some other related projects that the author of this language has completed. One of which is called Polski, and yes, that's how you read it. It's kind of like Venedic, but for spelling. It's basically an alternative Romance-like orthography for Polish that I guess makes it look less scary to Westoids. It has some cool ideas like palatalizing codas by preceding them with the letter I. The reason I'm mentioning it is because it can be applied to Venedic as well, considering that the language is spelled exactly like Polish is. It gives a new look to the language, one that Romance language speakers will likely find slightly more legible. Another side project of the author is Śleżan, which is similar to Venedic, but with a more Czech or Slavic-like orthography and phonology, and with a more modern Romance-like grammar. It has features you'll find in languages like Italian, French, or Portuguese that are absent in Venedic, such as articles, contractions of prepositions with said articles, an even more collapsed case system, no neuter gender, a perfect tense formed with the auxiliary to have and a past participle, a future tense evolved from an infinitive with an attached verb to have, and the whole language is in general much more regular compared to Venedic. Links to the author's website where you can read about all three of these projects are in the description. I'd like to hear your opinions on Venedic. I find it a very fascinating language, and the reason I made this video is because I wanted more people to know about it. If you speak a Romance language, I want to know if you can understand anything of it, or does it make you think, maybe French isn't that weird after all? Well, if you've heard of another constructed language by the name of Brythonic, I can't say that.